Welcome to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Andrew Soave.
Okay. Well, in a new sympathetic documentary about the Christian Nationalist movement, Joel Webbon, who's a pastor and far-right Christian nationalist himself and podcast personality, he had some interesting thoughts about what is holding Christianity back. I won't spoil it for you. Let's just watch this.
What do you see as the greatest threat to Christian nationalism as it's trying to make its roots?
Christians.
How so?
Christians are gay. Fake and gay, to be more precise. Christianity is a feminized religion.
I like that he briefly does an accent, I think, when he says that. Did you get a little French on the
I was
feminized, or maybe
was
it's
that,
Australian?
I was too distracted by the plinky banjo music,
Yeah.
and who I initially thought was Matt Walsh, but I don't think is.
Dana Lash called him Timu Matt Walsh, which
that's
is, I
fine.
think, very accurate
that's
and is
better,
becoming
yeah.
a funny
Yeah.
attack on people. So he explained on Twitter that by fake and gay, what he means is hypocritical
Okay.
and too feminine, too feminized. Of course, you could just say hypocritical and feminized if that's what you meant. Saying gay in that pejorative way is a little, I thought, like when we stopped being 11 years old, we kind of aged out of the demographic for calling everything.
Well,
you're
you know,
stupid, you're gay.
I've read the New Testament. I used to be very, for real, I thought I was going to become a priest at one point. Like, I used to be very, very religious, and Christ constantly talking about gender roles and the gays.
Yeah.
It's the main thing.
Yeah.
At no point does he bring up giving away all your money. He doesn't bring that up all the time. And that rich people go to hell. He doesn't talk about that. He talks about opposing the gays and gender roles. That's all Christianity, yeah.
It's too much dudes hanging out. It is maybe a little gay. The apostles, I don't know.
So okay,
But he's saying that's a bad thing.
I don't know Webbon. I did go through Webbon's Twitter feed. I don't think we agree on very much.
No.
But like,
and we're pointing this out, by the way, because it got made fun of on social media.
Yeah, because it's really funny. It's
conservative people were making fun of it.
It looks like the Babylon Bee produced it.
Yeah.
Like it's great.
Yeah.
My quick take on this, like, there's a lot of similar thoughts where I'm from in Oklahoma. Of like, I just call them theocrats, but I guess they'd be Christian nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
There's Christianity the faith, and there's Christianity the team. Mm-hmm. I really like Christianity the faith. I think there's some really good stuff there. There's some really decent people there. Christianity the team, when it's about like, we've got to have our tribe push out the Muslims, or we've got to have our tribe put down the Jews. I don't like that at all. And I think it's contradictory to a lot of Christian teaching, in fact, the bulk of it. And, stick with the Sermon on the Mount. I'm always impressed when Christians are doing that. But when it turns into this, like, civilizational us versus them, and what our civilization actually believes and does is not that important, like, you've lost the plot.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're having a lot of religious kind of argument. I'm seeing a rise of young people on the right are, I think, more religious than I considered them to be a generation ago. They're particularly more Catholic, actually. The push and pull between this kind of new Catholic movement on the right and the older evangelical movement matters in terms of foreign policy. It matters in terms of Israel policy very much, because the older evangelical conservatives.
Oh, the Left Behind series was foreign policy. I truly, growing up in Oklahoma, I mean, like, if Oklahoma in the 90s had a foreign policy, it was we have to have the Antichrist son on the throne of Moses in order to allow the apocalypse to happen, which is the goal.
Right.
And like, very different than what you're hearing in terms of...
these young people on the right, they don't care about. They're not invested in Israel's political project. There are anti-Semitic, and neither am I. Frankly, I'm an American. But there are anti-Semitic fringes in this that is, causing this friction with the whole Fuentes thing we've been discussing. We've discussed it ad nauseum more than it deserves. It's interesting. But there's also I go back to, and I said this about Fuentes or the people embracing him, like, no, but if you talk to like normal people who are not online, who maybe are very open to a religious message or are religious themselves, I think like 75% of the country is still Christian, even if just nominally. Not everybody goes to church every weekend, but are I think going to be repelled by saying Hitler is great and fascism is great, and similarly will be like, isn't it a little juvenile to be calling everything gay? I mean, you think gay is bad, but it's like, why we're just screaming that everything is gay? Like, that is actual juvenile male behavior that is off-putting to, first of all, it's off-putting to women, and it's off-putting to adults. But because online is disproportionately young and male, there's some, I think, speaking the language of teenage boys that is unhelpful to the dialogue. Not that I am out here promoting Christian nationalism, but if I was, I wouldn't just say that all the time.
Yeah. Well, my guess is that a lot of the folks that are online that are inclined towards Christian nationalism will love that kind of language. It probably will alienate the normies.
Yeah.
The language itself, I think, is offensive. Then again, I think the whole concept's offensive. Like I believe in pluralism and I believe in separation of state, and so I'm already gone before we get into the.
Yeah, they're not talking to you.
Yeah, I'm not. Again, like growing up in Oklahoma, there's this weird mix of like.
Are you rebelling against your origins? Did you have like a religious background kind of thing?
Yeah,
Is this?
I was very religious, and I think back in the day I probably would have liked having like the Constitution specify we were Christian or something like that. But it wasn't a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But now I would say on the other end of it, I think separation of state or separation of church and state is good for the state and it's good for the church. There are a bunch of theocrats where I'm from that would love to have Oklahoma be officially declared a Christian state. Every 5 to 10 years, some jackass will like have a bill to put a crucifix on top of our Capitol,
right?
In order to let all the atheists know they're not welcome, and let the Muslims know they're visitors. This happens regularly.
Right.
We put up a 10 Commandments monument because everybody in the state legislature was planning to run for governor, so they did it, and it ended up getting yanked out of it. And what you would inevitably get if it actually worked is you'd have to have the state legislature now debate whether or not Mormons are Christian. And having worked with a lot of these people, they are not up to the task.
Yeah.
They're not theologians. They're not even particularly good politicians. So putting them in charge of complex theological decisions and then having the state promulgate it is the worst recipe for a denomination I can think of. I think that if you want to have an apathetic, shitty European Christianity, embrace getting the state and the church involved. Go for that.
Well, I obviously don't want to get the state and the church involved, and I'm a pretty agnostic fellow myself. Although I do find in my old age, and I flirted certainly with periods of like uncompromising, like Christopher Hitchens, Bill Maher style atheism, where like all religion, you just talk about how bad religion is all the time, and that can get kind of obnoxious. This church has a community effect, and it's good for people.
I'm
and
a pro-religion.
You're just choosing nihilism and meaninglessness instead of it. That's not really a upsell.
I'm a pro-religion agnostic. I'm an agnostic.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope if I get hit by a bus that like my relatives and the plants I forgot to water are there. It'd be great if it turns out there's some meaning to all of this.
Right.
I don't really think so, but
Right.
I hope I'm wrong. That being said, though, no, I think there's all sorts of good stuff in religion. And I think the bad stuff can easily be hijacked by other things like ethnicity, like economics. I mean, the communists in the Soviet Union basically created a new religion out of government, even though they were atheists. So I tend to be pretty soft on religion, and I'd much rather people stay religious than just be religious about politics, which I think is what's happened in America. I don't think we're actually any more secular than we were 50 years ago. I think all the irritating people that would have been screechy Southern Baptists have now become really irritating, screechy activists.
Oh.
So if you can take the good parts of religion, which are myriad, of being a part of a community, of artificial kinship networks where it's not just a buddy in a club, but like somebody that you view as a cousin, you're going to take care of them, and the incredible altruism, that stuff's great. I think that's wonderful, but it needs to exist within a pluralistic framework that's part of the American experiment.
And as I want a separation of church and state, I want that to go both ways. Many religious people and religious institutions, rightly in my view, feel not separated, but actually persecuted by the state, forced to, because of law, take actions that violate their religious principles, from nuns having to pay or subsidize health care things that they don't agree with, to the cake baking, to all that. Unfortunately, where we seem to have landed on it is that everything needs to be mandatory in a blue state or forbidden in a red state or vice versa. And so everyone's religious beliefs or lack thereof must be forced on the other group, which is just totally opposite to how we want to live, to what I prescribe for people, which is do your religious thing, and if you object to participating in whatever, you should not be forced to. I will, fight to the death. Not really to the death. I'm not going to put my principles online to that degree, but I'll do a reasonable amount of complaining about the violation of your rights on my many television shows.
Yeah,
so
I think pluralism
that's
is
about all you can expect from me.
Pluralism and secularism are not necessarily the same thing.
For sure.
Pluralism means you do your own thing, I'll do my own thing, and we're going we're going to concede ground if it's a situation where we're having to involve with each other, but otherwise we can do. That's different than I'm going to promulgate secularism using the state. That's not pluralism, yeah.
More free media right after this.